Hey guys, welcome back to Kayfabe TV. Today we're going to continue our look at the Dune CCG from the 1990s, starting with a little bit of deck construction and some of the things we might need in order to play a game of Dune. So let's take a look. Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about Dune deck construction and how to start and set up a game. So there's a few things that you'll need in the way of accessories before you start playing a game of Dune. First thing is you'll need a way of keeping track of a few variable numbers during the course of a game, namely your favor total, your Solari total, the amount of spice that you have, and the exchange rate for spice in the collective stocks. So the first thing, favor, it's pretty easy. You start the game with 12-sided dice is the best way of kind of keeping track of that, in my opinion. You can use a 20-sided if you want to. Your favor will go up and down a little bit, depending on how much you battle and duel your opponent and how much they battle and duel you. There are some cards that can directly affect favor increase and decrease as well. But generally speaking, this particular deck just wants to stay on 10 favor, and so 12-sided dice is pretty good for that. The other thing you'll need is a way of keeping track of the Solari, or the currency in the game. So Solari is what you use to pay for all of the cards in your house deck and in your Imperial deck. You also use Solari to bid against your opponent when they decide that they want to petition to play some of their Imperial cards. So you start with 20 Solari. You actually have 5 bonus Solari on top of the 20 right at the start of the game to spend on favor and spice and other bits and pieces, which I'll go over in my gameplay demo next video. But a 20-sided die, generally speaking, is the best way of recording your Solari during the course of a game. You might need 2 of these. I don't know. Sometimes you do get between sort of 5 to 10 Solari generated every turn if you have most of your holdings out. So 20-sided dice is kind of about right. If you decide that you want to use pen and paper, it's definitely understandable. The other thing you'll need to do is record the current rate of exchange for spice, and a 6-sided dice is really good for that. I'll explain how that works in a couple of minutes. You'll need some tokens to denote spice, either when you acquire it or how many is sitting in the collective pool. And you also need something called deferment tokens. So deferment tokens are put on cards that have been used and subdued at the beginning of each of your turns. So the most common way for a card to be subdued is when it's been engaged in combat. So for example, one of our aides here may have lost a duel against your opponent. It's flipped upside down to say that it can't be used anymore. At the beginning of your turn, you put a deferment token on it. Once it has a deferment token on it, you can pay the difference between the amount of deferment tokens on it and its deploy cost in the top left-hand corner. In this case, 2 minus 1 equals 1. You pay 1 Solari, and you can flip this over and play it again on your turn. You don't have to do that, though. You can just let it sit subdued and gain deferment tokens until it meets its deployment cost in the top corner, in which case the card can just be turned over straight away. So every turn you generate 1 on each of your subdued cards, turn it over when it gets to this total, or when you pay the difference between the amount of deferment tokens you have with Solari for its cost. So blue, I think, is a really good look for deferment tokens. You can choose any color you like, but I find blue is pretty good. So the other parts of Dune and starting a game are your house deck, your Imperial deck, and of course your homeworld. So your homeworld is always that of your sponsor. So in this case, this is the Dune homeworld 2-pile. As you can see, there's a little bit going on in the card here. It has a description of what it is. It has a deployment cost. This is the deployment cost if it was ever subdued. It also has a guild symbol, which shows you which faction it's from. It has this symbol here, which is the battle symbol, and an amount of force that it generates in a particular battle, in this case 0. It has a command value, which is the amount of personnel that can be assigned to this particular home planet. And it has a resistance value, which means how much damage or how much attack in battle this particular homeworld can take before it's subdued. So homeworlds are really important. You always start the game with them in play. You need these in order to play a particular sponsor or faction, and they're good. They generate slurry for you. Two-pile happens to also mean that you can't be declared the target of a battle, which is pretty handy. This particular deck doesn't really care about battling or dueling the opponent. It just wants to generate tons of spice in the guild hoard and then buy that spice a lot, quite cheaply. So it's good at generating spice and reducing the cost of spice and then buying a lot of it from there. The other important card you'll need, which isn't really part of your Imperial deck but is an Imperial card, is Dune, Center of the Universe. So Dune, like your homeworld, has the battle symbol, but it also has this purple arbitration symbol. So there are two ways for your opponent to be able to interact with Dune. They can either battle Dune or they can arbitrate Dune. And each of the particular aids you have in your deck will have an attribute and then an amount of force that they're able to generate based on that attribute. If the amount of force that an aid or ally is able to generate exceeds this resistance value, Dune is subdued. Now, Dune is quite unique in the way that it's kind of separate from your Imperial deck, and it starts the game in the subdued position, which means at the beginning of every turn, you're going to add a deferment token to it. Now, some decks don't even need to deploy Dune. Dune is better suited to a deck that focuses on generating spice from deserts, which this deck isn't. When you get to the amount of deferment tokens on the deploy cost, you can deploy Dune if you want to, or at any stage you can pay the difference between the deferment tokens and the deploy cost. But not every deck wants to play Dune. Sometimes it's more advantageous just to stick with your homeworld and do what your deck wants to do. The other parts of your deck, of course, the home deck, which features 9 unique cards. You can have a minimum of 30 cards in your home deck, and the maximum number of each individual card is going to be 4. So home deck is kind of made up of kind of the little cogs of your deck overall. This is going to have things like events that will be able to generate spice for you, or disengage your opponents, or help you win petitions. It also has some of your aids, which will help you generate spice or attack your opponents as well. There's lots of things like being able to gain the initiative on a turn, being able to draw more cards, being able to bypass some of the petitions so you can play your cards without having to spend so much money. Your house deck is kind of, I guess, it's kind of bread and butter. That's the best way of explaining it. It doesn't have overly powerful things in it, but it's got a lot of combinations in there that'll help your Imperial deck and aid you towards acquiring the 10 spice and 10 favor that you need in order to win the game. Your Imperial deck is a little bit different though. Your Imperial deck is unique cards. You can only have 1 of each Imperial card in your Imperial deck, and these are often used to produce Solari. You'll find there's quite powerful characters that you can use to do attacks against your opponent: intrigue, duel, battle, and arbitration. Your Imperial deck kind of sits separate from your house deck, and in order to play cards from your Imperial deck, you've got to petition to play them, which means that your opponents get an opportunity to block these cards coming into play. The cost that you find in the top left-hand corner, that's the minimum that you're able to bid in order to play the card. And then in turn sequence order, you and your opponents take turns at bidding against the price that you want to pay this for. They can either choose to increase it or pass until no other players pass, and then the final deployment cost is either paid by you, the total of what people are prepared to bid, or the difference between this card's cost and the final deployment cost is paid by your opponents if they win the petition. I'll explain a little bit more about how that works as we actually go through a gameplay in the next video. So starting a game, of course, you'll need quite a big play area. There's lots of tokens and dice and bits and pieces that will take up some of the play field, and you also need lots of room in order to play some of your cards from your hand. First thing you need to do though is shuffle all of your cards together. So your house deck and your Imperial deck are treated separately. In this case, your house deck, you want to shuffle that nicely together, make sure it's random, no stack. And should just about be done there. It's all good. And then your Imperial deck, you do the same thing. So Dune sits separately from your Imperial deck. Your Homeworld sits separately too. You'll start the game, of course, with your 10 favor and 20 Solari. You'll get 5 bonus Solari to spend right at the beginning of the game. This is your Imperial deck, your house deck there. You've got your favor, you've got your Solari, and there's no spice, of course, that you have or that you start with at the beginning of the game. So in order to determine how much spice is found in the collective hoard to begin with, I'm just going to move this down a little bit. You start with 3 spice plus 2 for every every player in the game thereafter. So if you were playing a 2-player game, you'd start with 7 spice in the guild hoard. Now the price of spice changes depending on how much spice is in the guild hoard. So for example, if we were playing a 2-player game, the price of spice is going to be 6 for 0, 5 for 3, 4 for 6, 3 for above 6, and then the next row will be 2. I find the easiest way to do it is to have your spice in rows of 3, and then it's really easy to work out how much the current rate of exchange will be. So again, if you had no spice, it'll be 6. If you had up to 3 spice, it'll be 5. Up to 6 spice, it'll be 4. It'll be 3. It'll be 2. If I can find 2. And then from here on after, the price of spice to buy and sell is 1. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, why don't we just put a whole bunch of spice in the guild hoard and just buy it all for 1? Now, there's 2 things that kind of prevent you from doing that during the game. First thing is, you can only buy or sell spice in lots of 3 during each of your turns, which means that you can buy 3 spice, but you can't sell 3 spice thereafter. You can't buy 1 and then sell 2. You've got to either buy or sell spice. Also, your opponent is going to be wanting to buy spice too. They're wanting to get a good price on buying spice quite cheaply. So it's very rare that you'd find that there's a lot of spice in here unless your deck is really dedicated to generating more in the guild hoard. This deck happens to be one of those decks that really likes to do that. So in the gameplay demo next, you'll be able to see just how that works. So in this case, 2-player game, we're going to be starting the guild store of spice at 7, which is 3 plus 2 for each player, and the cost to buy the spice is going to be 6, 5, 4, 3. So that 5 bonus Solari you've got at the start of a game, you can use that to buy spice straight away. That of course will affect the that won't affect the guild hoard. It's separate from the guild hoard, but you do buy it at the current rate of exchange. So which means that 5 bonus Solari is basically going to buy you 1 spice, and you have 2 bonus Solari left over at the start of the game. Now you can use that Solari just to put into your Solari stock, or you can spend 2 Solari per additional favor that you'd like. So we might go that we want to buy 1 spice to begin with, which means we only have to generate 9 more in our own stock. And we might want to spend the remaining 2 bonus Solari on an additional favor, which means we start the game on 11 favor rather than 10, and then we start with 20 Solari as well. Now favor is important during the course of the game because it dictates the turn order. The higher your declared favor, the more likely you are to go first. Now there's a couple of tactics that you'll find in your house deck. Most players will look at playing a particular card or 2 that'll help get them started and start first in a game. So favor is quite important because the higher the favor, the more likely you are to go first. It also means that you kind of can take advantage of being able to play your cards first and generate spice and Solari and that kind of thing without being interrupted or being forced into a battle by your opponent. You kind of get the first move. There are some arguments that can be made about going second in a game, especially 2-player. You can kind of force your opponent to spend all of their Solari to play all their cards first, which means that you can play and partition your cards pretty freely, which is not a bad strat. But you need to be really careful because they may decide that they don't want to start next turn, and they can adjust their favour. There's particular cards that can alter declare favour, that can mean that the person with the lowest favour gets to go first rather than the person with the highest. So there's a little bit of strategy involved with how a turn actually breaks down. So this is basically how a game of Dune starts. You've got your house deck, you've got your Imperial deck, you've got your homeworld and Dune Subdued. You've got the collective guild stock, which generally sits somewhere around the top there, like that. You've got a way of recording your Solari, you've got your favour, you've got the spice that you bought. Your Imperial deck, of course, needs to be shuffled up, and then you need to allocate 3 cards from the top, which are going to be your Imperial Assembly. So your Imperial Assembly is where you partition cards from as you're playing during the game. So in order to partition a card on your turn, all you have to do is turn it over, and then start the partition at either the deployment cost or a higher number if you decide. Now you can only partition a card based on the amount of Solari that you have. You can't partition a card for more than the amount of Solari you're currently holding. So it means that if you've only got 2 Solari, you won't even be able to partition this card. You'll just have to wait until next turn when you're able to generate more from your home world in order to be able to play this. Now partitioning is really dynamic. All the players are involved when it comes to playing cards from each player's assembly. Everybody gets a chance to bid against the initial player and raise the price of this card. What that means is if an opponent wins, they have the final say, and you decide you want to pass, you don't want to pay that cost, this card gets turned back down and you're not able to petition to play any more of your Imperial cards. If you happen to win the petition though, if no one outbids you or you outbid the highest bidder, you get to play that card, and then you can choose to petition another card from your deck. So it's kind of quite a dynamic way of interacting with your opponent. It has a lot to do with the Solari, a lot to do with strategic sort of factors involved with what your opponents are aiming to play during their turns. It also can be quite political. If you're finding you're in a big game with lots of different players, you might find some players will try and team up together in order to make sure that they can play the cards that they want to. So the other aspect of it, of course, is your house deck. So your house deck is really where, if you're familiar with most card games, you'll find you have a hand, kind of an opening hand, and this is where you're going to be playing most of the cards from. So like most card games these days, you want to start with 7 cards in your starting hand. Just make sure that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you should have a good spread of tactics and events and allies, that sort of thing that you can play during your turn. So the next video that we're going to do is going to be a demonstration of how to play a game of Dune in a 2-player environment. Honestly, the game's probably better suited to being able to play with more players, but I hope that you guys will tune in. It's quite a dynamic game. There's lots and lots of factors involved with playing, even in a 2-player scenario. The decks are going to be fairly interactive, and you'll be able to see some of the nuances of play. I hope that you guys enjoy the video. If you've got any questions at all about how to get started on a game of Dune, please leave a question in the comments below. Happy to answer those questions for you. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you guys would like to see more Dune and gaming content, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.